Hello, and welcome to this lesson on one of the most basic of the quantitative concepts on the GMAT exam, fractions and decimals, or our non-integers. So let's start by just defining what a fraction is. And of course, that's a numerator over a denominator. And to evaluate fractions, you're basically looking at a rational value wherein the numerator is being divided by the denominator. So a rational value technically means something that can be expressed as a fraction. Now, for instance, 3/4 of x means that you're dividing x by 4 and you're then counting 3 of those parts. So that's just functionally what a fraction is. Now, you can always use your greatest common factor to reduce a fraction to what is known as its least common denominator. So 4/8 is going to be equal to 1/2 because you can divide the fraction 4/8 by 4 over 4 as 1 to produce 1/2, because dividing by 1 produces the value itself. And so 4 divided by 4 itself is 1. So that's how you can reduce your fractions, is basically by canceling out. This is just the long definition of what you're truly doing when you cancel out fractions. Now, continuing this along, we need to just consider the idea of taking fractions of a whole. And this is a really common thing that you'll need to do on the exam, and there's a really nice mental manipulation that you can do to simplify this. So let's just take that fraction of 3/4 and consider 3/4 of 120. Now, rather than multiplying this out, instead, first divide the whole by the denominator. So that means I'm just going to take 120 and divide it by 4 to reach a quotient of 30. Because 12 divided by 4 would be 3, and then just keep the 0. Then you want to multiply that quotient by your numerator. So I'm going to take that 30 and multiply it by 3 to determine that 90 is 3/4 of 120. And this is just going to be the most efficient and simplified way to take for any fractions of wholes. Now, let's talk about adding, subtracting, or comparing fractions, and we're going to do that by using something called the bow tie method, and we'll do it here for 2/5 plus 3/7. So in order to add, subtract, or compare fractions, you need what is known as a common denominator. And you want to first multiply your denominators from the fractions that you're adding to produce a common denominator. In this case, you're going to have 5 times 7, which is 35. Then the reason this gets called the bow tie sometimes is you kind of end up with like a visual bow tie at the end of this. So you're going to cross multiply your numerators, and we bring back in our 2/5 and 3/7 to figure out what our new numerators are going to be when we have our fraction now out of the common denominator of 35. So we multiply up and over. 7 times 2 would get 14. 5 times 3 would get 15. And we're going to have 14 35ths plus 15 35ths. Then our last step is to just sum the numerators, keeping the common denominator. So 14 35ths plus 15 35ths is going to be 29 35ths, which is what you get when you add 2/5 to 3/7. And this method, the bow tie method, you could use to subtract as well and potentially compare non-common common denominator fractions if you're asked to do so on the exam. So then we've got to talk about multiplying and dividing fractions. So you're going to just multiply straight across with fractions. It's the easiest operation to accomplish. So 2/5 times 3/7 using the same fractions, it's just going to be 6 35ths. Just multiply straight across, keep your numerator and denominator separate, and you'll be fine here. But division is going to require a little bit more attention to